I stumbled into space, if you will. I grew up, I'm actually third generation on both grandparents' side, general aviation pilot. So I grew up with my father flying, me in the right-hand seat, and have always had a fascination with things that fly. And so it was a logical extension of that passion and that interest that I would gravitate toward things that fly out of the atmosphere. I'm a child of the space race. I remember, growing up in first and second and third grade, being pulled out of classrooms by the nuns to have the TV wheeled in and watch the launches. In those cases, those were Gemini launches. And so, I remember very distinctly, being in front of the TV and watching Walter Cronkite choke up as Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. I am a product of that generation, and that was a really an interest. If you think about that generation, what we were all about, we were scared to death. We were ducking and covering because we were concerned that the Russians were going to send a bomb our way at any moment. And it was very scary times, and yet it was a wildly optimistic time. There was this sense that there was nothing we could not accomplish if we didn't set our minds to it. And sure enough, the combination of that fear of the Cold War, factor in the wishes of a martyred president, and we did something magical that really, no matter what you say, when historians write the book on our era, it's going to be in the lead line of the paragraph on our era, that we landed on the moon, we put people there, and they came back safely. So to me, that was always something that I loved and had excitement for. I got in the news business because I love the news business. I like writing, I like communicating. I took detours into the world of local news, but always had this passion, was a pilot, had airplanes and so forth. And when the opportunity came at CNN to be their science correspondent, which as a history major I really wasn't fully qualified for, but convinced them that I'd be good at, I had this tremendous opportunity to get suddenly a front row seat to all things space. And so I, just in a way had a completely accidental career, which led me to where I am right now as someone who, loves space, cares about it, and wants to advocate for it.
And who's that that you're with right now?
Well, I work for the PBS NewsHour right now, primarily. That's my main client. And I do some work for PBS FRONTLINE. I do, we do longer form stories. It's interesting. I worked for CNN for 17 years, and if I got a 2.5-minute piece, I was very happy. And that's in the course of a 24-hour day of broadcasting. I work for the NewsHour, which is a little hour every night, and I do 8-10-minute pieces for them, which is just a treat. And I just did a piece, a couple of things, but recently did a piece with Elon Musk going out to the facility in Hawthorne and talking to him about SpaceX, and also went over to Lockheed Martin in Denver and talked to John Karras about the efforts to build Orion and the Space Launch System. So I'm a lucky guy. I can call up these people, and they let me walk around their factories and look at their toys, and maybe one day I'll get to ride on one of them. We'll see.
So the way I discovered you, and that I felt most famous for, was when you were working with Spaceflightnow and doing This Week in Space. How did that get started?
Well, the simple truth, Michael, is I got fired from CNN. CNN fired me and 7 producers that were all part of the Science and Technology Unit. They eliminated the Science and Technology Unit, which is a whole other story. Why a prestigious network like CNN would deem science and technology not important enough to have its own distinct unit is a whole separate issue, but says an awful lot about the state of mass media, put it that way. But the bottom line was I was suddenly on the beach, as it were, and there was a launch coming up. And frankly, I did not want to miss a shuttle launch. I had been to quite a few of them and wanted to continue going, and I wanted to continue covering spaceflight in some fashion. And so, when you're outside the palace gates, suddenly there on the street, looking up at the edifice of the fortress, you think, well, there's got to be some other ways I can reach the public. And sure enough, the technology was there. And so I called some friends of mine, my friend Stephen Young at Spaceflightnow.com, and I said, what kind of bandwidth do you have down there? And how hard would it be to plug a Mac into a camera, and we mash that up with NASA TV and we do a long commentary. And instead of doing the 2-minute things I did for CNN, basically get from launch to really SRB separation, really never got to MECO because that's 8 minutes. We can't give you 8 minutes. I mean, basically, I was sent by CNN, frankly, in case it blew up. So I said to Stephen, I said, we have a tremendous opportunity with the way the world is now, the flattening distribution situation, the fact that we can stream out on the web. Why not give people 6, 7, 8 hours, just like the old days? Every last minute of launch day, no commercials. We'll try to get some sponsorship money. And we'll cover launches the way we would like to see them be covered and the way we think people who are really into space would like it. In other words, inch wide, 500 miles deep, just the opposite of CNN. And, frankly, when you think about the 2-minute coverage that CNN offered, it pleased no one. If you were into space, you were like, well, that didn't tell me anything. And if you're not into space, there wasn't enough explanation to even understand why you even spent 2 minutes on it. So to have the opportunity to sit down for, the entirety of launch day and just talk about space and share it with an audience that has the ability to tweet and text back and join this conversation, it was extraordinary. I've never had more fun covering anything by any other means. It was finally, after all those years of wondering what was going on the other side of that glass, people were there, and they frequently I'd be on in the course of things I'd forget an astronaut's name or a mission, and people would text it or tweet it to me. So it was a dialogue, a conversation. It was so exciting, and it opened my eyes to the possibilities of new media. Having said that, though, This Week in Space was a little bit harder to get sponsorship for, frankly. So we're still trying to figure out what this new media world is all about. But I do think we discovered that there are ways, if you have expertise, interest, and passion, of connecting with an audience without a lot of overhead. You don't need no stinking truck anymore. And that was a great lesson for me. Now, I wasn't able to do a webcast for SpaceX because they wanted to, do it a little differently than we would like to do it. That's fine. But I hope someday I can adapt that model somehow for future coverage of space.